The smell is the first thing that breaks you. It is not just rot. It is the stench of a hollowed-out soul. It clings to the velvet curtains. It settles in the back of your throat, a thick, cloying reminder that death has been invited to dinner. Look at the throne. Do not look away. If you blink, the nightmare becomes real. The man sitting there wears the weight of the world. Gold, silk, jewels. He wears the triple crown of the papacy. But beneath the mitre, there is no skin. Only leathered gray bone. This is Pope Formosus. He has been in the ground for 7 long months, and yet he is presiding over the highest court in Rome. How did we get here? To understand the madness, you must understand the city. Rome in the year 897 was not a city of God. It was a city of ghosts and daggers. The Roman aristocracy were like wolves, fighting over a bleeding carcass. The papacy was the prize, and Formosus had played the game too well. He was a man of decisive ambition. He had been a bishop. He had been an exile. He had been a shadow moving through the halls of power. But when he died, he thought his battles were over. He was wrong. His successor, Pope Stephen VI, did not want a funeral. He wanted a spectacle. Stephen was a man possessed by a singular burning rage. The Spoleto family, his masters, demanded a sacrifice. They needed to prove that Formosus was a fraud, that every law he passed, every king he crowned was illegal. So, Stephen issued an order that made the grave diggers pray for their lives. Dig him up. Imagine the sound of shovels hitting the stone in the dead of night. Imagine the gasps of the monks as the lid was pried open. Formosus was not a skeleton yet. He was preserved by the cold, damp Roman soil. He was a mummy in a state of hideous transition. They hauled him out of the dark. They washed the dirt from his shriveled hands. They dressed him in the sacred robes of the fishermen. Every stitch of silk, every ounce of gold was a mockery. They carried him through the streets like a macabre doll. The people stayed behind locked doors. They knew a curse was being born. Now, we are in the basilica. The candles flicker, but they provide no warmth. The air in the room is thick with the taste of copper. The judges sit in a semicircle. They are terrified. They look at the floor. They look at their hand. They look anywhere but at the throne. Because on that throne, the corpse is leaning. His jaw is wired shut with thin silver threads. Without those wires, his mouth would hang open in a permanent scream. His head tilts to the left, as if he is listening to a secret no one else can hear. Opposite the corpse stands Pope Stephen. He is not a man of God today. He is a man of the pits. His face is a mask of pure, boiling hatred. He does not see a rotting body. He sees a traitor. He sees the man who humiliated his bloodline. He leans in until his nose almost touches the dead man's skull. He screams, "Why did you covet the Holy See? Why did you leave your seat in Portus to steal the throne of Peter?" The corpse stays silent. The only sound is the rustle of Stephen's robes as he paces back and forth, like a predator circling a cage. But a trial needs two sides. A trial needs a defense. Then, a movement behind the throne. A young, terrified deacon. His name is lost to the shadows of history. He has been ordered to stand in the dark. He has been hired to be the voice of the dead. The deacon begins to weep. His tears fall onto the dusty marble. But he must answer. When Stephen screams a question, the deacon must whisper the reply. I did it for the church. The voice sounds thin. It sounds ghostly. It sounds like it is coming from the throat of the corpse itself. The spectators feel the hair on their arms rise. This is not a legal proceeding. This is a necromancy. This is a descent into a fever dream. But wait. Look at the floor. Right at the base of the throne. Do not miss this. A thin, jagged line is opening in the marble. A forensic breadcrumb left by the earth itself. The ground is beginning to groan. The basilica, built on ancient bloody foundations, is reacting. It is as if the stones cannot bear the weight of this sin. Keep your eyes on that crack. By the time we hit 12 minutes, this crack will swallow everything. Step by step, the trial moves deeper into the dark. The accusations get louder. The deacon's voice gets weaker. And the corpse just stares, waiting for the end, waiting for the earth to break. The trial did not end in an hour. It lasted 4 days. Days of heat, flies, and the unrelenting smell. Stephen VI was no longer a man of logic. He had entered a state of divine delirium. He paced the stone floor until the leather of his boots began to fray. He wasn't just accusing a man. He was wrestling with a ghost. The struggle was not for justice. It was for the very soul of Rome. You have to understand why Stephen hated him so much. Formosus, the man now rotting on the throne, had been a master of the long game. He had been a bishop who was excommunicated and then brought back. He had survived the daggers of the Roman streets 4 decades. But his biggest crime in the eyes of the Spoleto family was the crown. Formosus had crowned Arnulf of Carinthia as Holy Roman Emperor. By doing so, he had spat in the face of the Spoletos. He had invited a foreigner to rule the Holy Land. To Stephen, this wasn't just politics. It was Massicive heresy. Every time the sun rose over the basilica, the scene got more grotesque. The humidity of the Roman spring was the enemy of the dead. The corpse began to change. The purple silk of the papal robes grew damp. Dark patches began to spread across the chest of the dead man. The silver wires holding his jaw were under strain. As the flesh withered, the wires pulled tighter, cutting through the leathery skin like cheese wire. Whisper, the judges couldn't breathe. They held spice-soaked cloths to their faces. But Stephen didn't care. He leaned into the rot. He screamed, "Answer me!" He would grab the skeletal shoulder of the corpse and shake it. Dust and bits of dried skin would float into the candlelight. The struggle was becoming physical. Then there was the deacon, the young man standing in the shadows behind the throne. His job was to be the proxy, to speak for the mouth that could not move. By the 3rd day, the deacon was losing his mind. He was starving. He was dehydrated. But he could not leave. Every time Stephen threw a legal accusation, the deacon had to whisper an excuse. The voice was barely human anymore. It was a dry, raspy croak. "I did it for peace. I did it for the church." The spectators began to wonder if the deacon was still alive, or if the spirit of Formosus had truly taken hold of his tongue. Outside the basilica, Rome was a tinderbox. The Spoleto family had guards on every corner. They were suppressing a riot. The people loved Formosus. To them, he was the people's pope. They saw the smoke rising from the basilica chimneys. They heard the muffled screams of Stephen. They knew a sacrilege was happening behind those heavy bronze doors. The struggle was spilling into the street. Men with sharpened wooden pikes stood in the alleys, waiting, watching for a sign. Inside, the legal battle was reaching its peak. Stephen produced the ancient scrolls. He cited the Council of Nicaea. He cited the laws of the apostles. He was trying to erase every moment of the last 5 years. If he could prove Formosus was never a legal pope, then every priest Formosus ordained was a fraud. Every blessing he gave was a curse. Every marriage he sanctified was a sin. Stephen was trying to rewrite reality itself, but the earth was losing patience. Remember that crack in the marble? The forensic breadcrumb from chapter 1? It wasn't just a crack anymore. It was a fissure, a jagged black mouth, opening in the sanctuary. Whenever Stephen stomped his foot, the floor would hum, a low guttural vibration that made the holy water jump in its basin. The struggle wasn't just between two men. It was between the laws of man and the laws of the world. Stephen was becoming more violent. He began to mock the corpse's silence. He placed a silver chalice in the skeletal hand. The brittle brown fingers snapped. The sound of bone breaking echoed through the silent hall. Stephen laughed, a high, jagged sound that chilled the marrow of every bishop present. He was winning, but his victory was a decisive hallucination. He was destroying the papacy to save his pride. The trial moved into the final accusations. The struggle had reached the point of no return. The air was so thick with incense and decay that the candles began to flicker and die. The room went dark. Only the glow from the crack in the floor remained. A dull red light, reflecting off the bottom of the marble, as if the fires of the basement were finally showing their face. Tomorrow the verdict, tomorrow the revelation. But tonight the dead and the living sat together in the dark, waiting for the earth to break. The air is thick, buzzing with flies. Pope Stephen VI, 50s, wild-eyed, disheveled, red robes clinging to him, stands before the throne. The corpse of Formosus is a gruesome, rotting mess, still seated, almost comical in its stillness amidst the chaos. The judges, various clerics, some looking horrified, others complicit, are scattered. The deacon, young, terrified, is still lurking behind the throne, forgotten. The murmuring crowd, a mix of clerics, Spoleto guards, and a few brave or foolish citizens, shifts uneasily. The smell is almost unbearable. Stephen, voice hoarse, vibrating with feverish zeal, screaming at the corpse, "Formosus! You stand accused. Perjurer, violator of the sacred laws, usurper of the Holy See. Your ambition knew no bounds." Stephen stumbles forward, nearly collapsing, then rights himself. "Stephen," indeed, "by the power vested in me, by God and by the righteous fury of Mother Church, I find you guilty." A few gasps from the crowd. Most are too stunned, too repulsed to react. "Stephen, so indeed, every act, every blessing, every ordination, all are null and void. Your papacy, unwritten, your very existence, a lie." Stephen's eyes, burning with a maddening light, fall upon Formosus's right hand, which rests limply on the armrest of the throne. Stephen, indeed, and these hands, these blasphemous hands, that dared to bestow the sign of the cross, the hands of a thief, they shall bless no more. He signals violently to a group of rough-looking executioners, 20s, hardened, grim-faced, who step forward carrying crude, sharpened knives. The crowd recoils further. A priest, elderly, trembling, whispering, "No. This is sacrilege." Stephen whirls, his gaze sweeping the basilica, daring anyone to defy him. Stephen's silence. This is justice. Divine justice. The executioners reach the throne. One grabs Formosus's stiff, gray right hand. Another raises his knife. The deacon, hidden behind the throne, whimpers, pressing himself against the cold stone. Sound of a sickening, wet chop. The 3 fingers of Formosus's right hand, still curled in a gesture of blessing, fall onto the red velvet cushion, then roll onto the marble floor with a faint, gruesome thud. A collective, horrified gasp rips through the basilica. Stephen cackles, a dry, rasping sound. Stephen, indeed, to the dust from whence you came. The executioners roughly pull the corpse from the throne. It slides to the floor, a broken, defiled thing. They strip it of its tattered papal robes, leaving it in plain, simple grave clothes. Stephen, indeed, drag him through the streets of Rome. Let all see the fate of the usurper. And then, to the Tiber. Let the river wash away his foul memory. The executioners begin to drag the body, its head bumping sickeningly against the marble. Suddenly, a deeper, more resonant sound. A low, guttural growl from beneath the basilica. The candelabras on the walls rattle violently. Dust and small pieces of plaster begin to fall from the ceiling. The thin, jagged crack at the base of the throne, noticed earlier, widens alarmingly. Reddish light and smoke begin to seep up from it. A wave of panic spreads through the crowd. People scream, pushing and shoving towards the exit. Stephen, unfazed, almost ecstatic, yes. The earth itself rejects him. But the rumbling intensifies. The very foundations of the ancient basilica begin to groan, the sounds of ancient stone grinding against stone. Outside, in the Roman streets, we hear the growing roar of a riot, not just the Spoleto guards, but the common people, now emboldened by the tremors, rising in fury against Stephen and his madness. The basilica is shaking violently now. Cracks spiderweb across the floor and walls. The sound of crumbling stone mixes with the screams of the terrified congregation. The executioners, dropping the corpse, flee in terror. The body of Formosus is left on the quaking floor. Stephen stands amidst the chaos, a lone, mad figure, his face illuminated by the flickering candles and the infernal glow rising from the cracked floor. He looks not afraid, but utterly consumed, lost in his divine delirium, as if the wrath of God and man is converging upon this single, unholy place. A large section of the ceiling above him begins to crack and break. A single, massive block of stone dislodges. Stephen stares up, his lips moving, perhaps in prayer, perhaps in a final, defiant curse.